In India, on 13th April 1919, at least 10,000 unarmed men, women and children assembled in Amritsar's walled garden called Jallianwala Bagh. It was a peaceful gathering, but Indian Army officer Brigadier General Reginald Dyer came to the garden, blocked the entrances, and without any warning, ordered his troops to directly fire at these innocent individuals. They shot more than 1,000 rounds. Official figures say 379 people were killed. It is thought to have been hundreds more. Dyer later said that the firing was not to disperse the meeting, but to punish the Indians for disobedience. It was barbarism at its worst. Dyer was rewarded in Britain with £26,000 from a public campaign and a jeweled sword. The victims were given just 500 rupees each. A century later, the British government has never apologized for this atrocity. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre lives in the heart of every Indian around the world. And with UK-India relations so crucial in the decades ahead, why did Theresa May refuse to apologize earlier this month? When I visited the garden with my mother as a teenager, she said to me, "Son, it was nothing short of murder."
Karan, first of all, thank you so much for choosing this topic as your debate. I think it's such an important discussion to have, and actually it's part of a wider national discussion that needs to be had around empire in general and the horrors of empire, a part of British history that we so often try to sweep under the carpet and pretend never happened, but yet the repercussions are still being felt to this very day. I think it's interesting that both Theresa May and David Cameron have referred to the massacre as shameful, but have not apologised. And actually, as you say, and I'm not bringing this to be about Brexit at all, but you know, once we do, if we do leave the EU, we need new trading partners. So our relationship with the Commonwealth has to change, and it has to become one of partnership. And for that to happen authentically, we need apologies for many of these sorts of massacres that have happened throughout our history.
And you know, you're so right. And I've just come back from India yesterday, and I was there for the beginning of the largest elections the world has ever known. 900 million voters in a country of 1.25 billion. And it's just remarkable seeing those elections in action. And yet, every single day, there was all the election news, but the Jallianwala Bagh massacre was in the papers in India, wherever I went, every single day. It means so much to India.
When you say it was in, I mean, obviously not, what was the coverage?
One is remembering it.
Right.
And remembering the atrocity and saying this should never ever happen again, but also acknowledging this was the turning point in India's fight for independence. Mahatma Gandhi was spurred on after this, and after 1919, it took almost 3 more decades to 1947 for India to gain its independence. And talking about Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, he just said recently, "Today we observe 100 years of the horrific Jallianwala Bagh massacre. India pays tributes to all those martyred on that fateful day. Their valor and sacrifice will never be forgotten. Their memory inspires us to work even harder to build an India they would be proud of." And, you know, this is the thing. When I went there with my mother, I mean, it brings tears to my eyes. They were innocent men, women and children. They were Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims. They were there peacefully and just shot down.
And what was hideous, Carol, was that a lot of the soldiers who were in the British Army were Gurkhas and were Sikhs, and they were ordered to shoot on their own people. And what I found hideous about that, because I've started to read about it, I knew about it, but I've started to read about it in detail, was the shooting was happening as they were, these weren't armed rebels, they were people who'd come from the countryside just to listen to some political speeches. And the shooting started, they were trying to get away, they were trying to get through the gates, they weren't surging on anybody. But can I just say about sometimes an apology so long after an event can look like political expediency. But I think what is really important historically is that a country acknowledges its shame, its past violence, in the way Germany did after the Nazis. They've always said how wrong it was in the Senate for decades. And I think it's a measure of a country if you do that. And I think if the people of India want us to apologise, if they think those two words, we're sorry, would heal wounds, then we have to be guided by them and we have to say sorry.
Let's see what the Prime Minister says, because her view is probably more important than the five of us put together.
As Her Majesty the Queen said before visiting Jallianwala Bagh in 1997, it is a distressing example of our past history with India. We deeply regret what happened and the suffering caused. I'm pleased that today the UK-India relationship is one of collaboration, partnership, prosperity and security. Indian diaspora make an enormous contribution to British society, and I'm sure the whole House wishes to see the UK's relationship with India continue to flourish.
Theresa May speaking last week. June, not for now, but you talk about past horrors, was it? Horrors of the Empire. It's not all horrific. The Empire did bring some positives.
Well, it depends what side you're on.
Ending burning women, Indian widows being burnt when their husbands died. I think that's quite a good idea.
If you were to speak to my ancestors, they would say the horrors of the Empire. And
you wouldn't support burning Indian widows?
No, of course not.
Thank you. So I think that was a good thing we stopped that.
And I'll be quick before Rachel comes in.
And there's just one final point, if I can. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, Karen, I came into this debate probably thinking I don't agree with the apology, because I don't know quite where you'll end, because we'll then start apologising what happened quite respectfully to you, where we'll end. And I've been completely moved by the way you've put this. So I came in thinking, I really like Karen, but he's got this one wrong. Actually, I think you're right. So credit to you. I've moved completely because of what you said.
Well,
my concern is that an apology is too easy a sticking plaster to put on a scar that is obviously so deep and so terrible for India. And perhaps, I mean, I'm trying to be generous here to the lack of apology given by our politicians in succession, from Theresa May when she went to India in 2016 to Theresa May in the Commons just then, and to the High Commissioner in India, Dominic Asquith, who also refused to say sorry and just said that he regretted the regret caused. Let's hear from him.
The revulsion that we felt at the time is still strong today. It tarnished the reputation. And we regret, as I say, the suffering, and will continue to do so, the suffering caused.
If an apology helps to make it better and India insists and wants and desires an apology, then we should give an apology.
June, you wanted to say something to that?
Just a very quick point. Prince Charles went to Ghana this year and demonstrated how you do this properly. He was at Elmina Castle at the slave fort and he apologised. He apologised for Britain's role in all that was done to the thousands of slaves that were taken out of that country.
And you see, this is the thing, there is a precedent for making apologies. I went with David Cameron to India in 2013. He went on to Amritsar. Many of us said, please apologise, it'll make a huge difference. He didn't do it.
Did you ask him
on the other hand, Bloody Sunday in 2010...
Did he ever tell you, Karen, why he wouldn't do it?
He didn't, but he absolutely apologised for Bloody Sunday. Gordon Brown apologised for the children who were sent away to Australia. Justin Trudeau has apologised for the ship 100 years ago that was turned away from Vancouver. So there is precedent. And I agree, it should not be a sticking plaster. And we should also learn from it. The British children must learn about this. India, of course, it's in the heart of every Indian. There's the learning, but the apology will go such a long way. I would do it straight away. I would do it.
There are people in India, Karen, who don't want the India Telegraph. They did a piece, and they're just saying, can the present generation of Britain be truly held accountable for what was perpetrated by members of a colonial apparatus, even while conceding the possibility that some of the descendants are in a position of privilege on account of their ancestry? This is really important, this one. Would a mere apology suffice as compensation for the humongous scale of violence and exploitation that India has endured as a colony? And that's what I said at the start of it. But no, I think the word sorry. If, you know, somebody... I read one piece that someone said, better than saying sorry, why don't we invite the descendants, children and mothers and fathers of people who were killed in the massacre to this country, you know, let them live, be educated. That's better than just saying two words, I'm sorry.
So this is not either or. The sorry is absolutely essential and will go a long way, because we've got a great future ahead of us, Britain and India, the 5th and 6th largest economies in the world, and India growing and growing for the decades to come. But then you get into things like reparations. You know, trillions of pounds were supposedly taken from India by the empire, but then there was a lot of good that the empire did as well, and it's an argument. My friend Shashi Tharoor, the former Indian finance minister, wrote a book, Inglorious Empire. And from his point of view, £1 as a token reparation. Token, just the gesture would, in his view, go a long way. So I think the apology will go a long, long way.
Yeah, and I completely agree.